So give me just a minute to start recording. Okay. So I just want to do a couple of housekeeping before we do. We had some issues the last time. When we vote this time, if we do a vote, I need to see actual hands raised. The little hands don't show up on the recordings. So if we can see hands, that'll be better. And if we can just do a real quick roll call so that Barb gets everybody's name. So if you want to just start saying your names, I know it's going to be hard.
I got names.
You have everybody?
Yeah, I've got everybody now. Thank you.
Okay, as long as we got everybody this time. Okay.
Yep.
I will put the agenda up. Give me a second here. Oh, that's not what you want to see, is it? Which? Okay.
You got it.
Okay. Okay. So, Daryl, you may take it.
Let's call this meeting to order. Can everybody get a chance to look over the minutes yet? To approve?
Can everybody hear Daryl?
Not really.
No, not really.
Okay, he was
He
just
has a
asking.
terrible buffering issue.
He was asking if everybody could approve. So if you can show your hands for the approval of the minutes.
Hey, Kelly.
Yeah.
Now I don't see everyone to see their hands. I see the document.
Okay.
There we go.
How's that?
Thank you.
So one more time. Everybody who approves, if you can raise your hand.
So, hey, one thing, I think that they said I was at the last meeting, which I was not.
Right.
I don't know if that makes a
I
difference.
caught that. Thank you, Ken.
Okay.
And do we first
Okay,
need a
so
motion?
1, 2, 3.
Do we first need a motion and a second?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I'll second it.
So moved.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sean, you said yes?
Yes.
Yes.
6,
Ken
7.
Boyd
And
says
Ken?
yes.
Okay, thank
Aye.
you all.
Okay.
We're good.
Let me.
Hey, Nick, the agenda
There we
board
go.
members. Since we have two board.
That was board member. I know everybody's having a hard time hearing him. So Ms.
I
Patrica.
guess Chris first.
Hi, everybody. You're stuck with me for one more month. I didn't know that we'd be meeting in June, so I said my goodbyes last month. But you can see that Debbie Jordan is still on the call. Debbie Jordan will be taking over for me beginning in July. And Debbie is not going to be talking to us tonight because of sunshine. We can't be in a meeting together where we're both talking outside of a publicly noticed meeting. So I want to introduce you to Debbie if you don't already know her. And as I said last time, you're in very, very capable hands moving forward with Debbie. And the transition is going to be super smooth and super good. I don't have a ton for you in terms of a board update beyond letting you know what I think is obvious, which is it is all hands on deck all day, every day, blood, sweat, and tears into figuring out how to reopen schools. We as a district had started that process, and then the governor and the DOE came out with some guidance and suggestions, although I do think that ultimately, and this was stated pretty early in the governor's or the DOE's suggestions, this is going to be a local decision. And so we've put together a pretty robust task force, and they are meeting as we speak. Their Zoom meeting also started at 4 o'clock. Last week, staff laid out some potential models for reopening. Number one model, number one goal, reopen schools as normally as humanly possible beginning on August 10th. Understand that that is the goal. Should that not be possible, there are other models that are being looked at with a focus on making sure that our K-6 kids and our lowest 25 performers and our ESE, exceptional student education students, and our non-English speaking students have as much in-class instruction as humanly possible, with a blended model for other students grades 7 through 12. And there are various models presented. Those models were pared down from many, many, many more models. And those models were pared down based on feedback that we got from parents and teachers in surveys that were sent out to parents and teachers. Interesting differences between those surveys. First of all, if you look at some place like Miami-Dade, the feedback they're getting from their families is significantly different from the feedback we're getting here in Lee County. And that could be for a couple different reasons. It could be just a different mindset in Lee County on how to approach COVID. It could be because they're in a much different position than we are in with regard to COVID. The other interesting difference to me was the significant responses from non-English speaking families. They have a much lower comfort level with returning to a face-to-face learning environment than our English speaking families do. And, you know, I wonder the cause of that. And I've asked the superintendent whether it makes sense for us to engage in a COVID myths versus facts kind of information campaign with not just our non-English speaking communities, but with our entire school community. So, you know, those models were presented to the task force last week. This week, more information will be presented to them, but I believe they're going to be broken up into subcommittees, and significant feedback will be given to the superintendent so that he can come forward with a strong plan for the board to discuss, you know, at a meeting relatively soon. So that's really my update for you at this point. There's tons and tons of financial stuff to dive into with regard to CARES Act dollars and budgeting issues more locally. Anybody have any questions for me?
Yes, I do, Chris. You mentioned that Miami-Dade parents, they were surveyed and they have a different idea than us here in Collier County, Lee County. And I was wondering, what's that difference? Are they not comfortable with resuming with school in the fall?
In my conversations with my board colleagues over in Miami-Dade, yes, they are far less comfortable with a face-to-face model in Miami-Dade than they are here in Lee.
And I'm curious as to why we're comfortable with the face-to-face model, and we've been seeing a lot of news reports that the numbers are actually increasing in both in Lee and Collier counties. And people, when I go out, half the people do not wear masks, and especially I'm thinking about elementary school students, because I've been a substitute teacher and I know how affectionate they are. They love to kiss, they love to hug. It's really, really hard. I read over some of the materials, and it mentioned having lunch in the classrooms, and I just find it be really, really difficult, especially for that age group. Especially you think about, you know, bus pickup, drop off, you know, the sneezing, the coughing, the, you know, the kissing, all that. So I was just wondering, what does that look like, being that the numbers are only increasing, and also the number of children and young adults are increasing. A lot of them are asymptomatic, but they're passing it on to other people.
Yes, well, the survey was sent out before we started to see an increase in numbers. And one of the things the superintendent did say is that he will continue to reach out to the community to continue to gauge their comfort level with whatever models it is that we put forward. So I think you might see a difference here in Lee given the increasing numbers. I totally hear you, and I would agree with that entirely. And you know, when we talk about, you talk about our littlest ones wearing masks, the number of layered considerations that go into that. You have to look at the social emotional development of a child. Is that child going to be able to learn and not be afraid in an environment where half the teacher's face is covered? You know, I'll be out in public and I'll be talking to somebody. I don't always talk to people. Sometimes I just smile at them. Now they can't see my smile because my smile is covered by my mask. And a lot of that a lot of that interaction that you gain, a lot of the body language that you're able to read when you're in a classroom environment, some of it's lost by wearing a mask. Now, when you look at transportation, the impossibility of social distancing on a bus. I mean, it is literally impossible. The word literally is overused, but it is used appropriately in this circumstance. If we were to implement true social distancing on a bus, we would be able to transport a total number of 7 students.
Wow.
I'm sorry, Kelly, is it 7 or 9?
It's probably, oops, it's probably more like 9.
9.
Wow.
Okay, a total of 9 students. And if you take families into consideration, so you put brothers and sisters together on a bus, I think that number increases to 14. Now, typically our buses hold 77 students.
Oh, wow.
So I'm hopeful that we will be getting numbers. When I say numbers, I mean, how much does it cost to transport 14 kids on a bus versus how much it costs to transport 77 kids on a bus, so that we as a community can understand the sheer impossibility of doing it that way. And so then that leads to the next logical question of, do we have to require masks on buses? And these are questions that are being asked, Tamika. These are not, I don't have those answers right now. We're relying on the expertise of some of the people on the task force to make those recommendations to the superintendent, in addition to looking at what's being rolled out or what's being discussed in other districts, because nobody has come forward with a solid plan yet. Does that make
Is
sense?
there,
Alina also is up next. So Alina,
Yes, hi. I have a couple of questions about the presentation that was provided during the task force meeting. And it looks like the presentation was, let's open schools at all costs. And obviously there are a lot of concerns about the, keeping teachers and kids safe. So extra cleaning, extra duties for the teachers to keep them, sanitize, provide extra services within a class, extra work for teachers, extra work for staff. Now, about checking temperatures. So not all the schools even have nurses. So extra burden on everybody without any kind of personal acknowledgement of that burden. And second, where are we going to get funds to cover that burden? Teachers already have a lot of things to do. We don't have enough staff in classes as it is. Nothing of that was even mentioned in the presentation. Also, in terms of transportation, it was stated that transportation is a privilege. Okay, so even if we're lucky and we put 35 kids on a bus instead of 70, so where the other 35 would go that, used it last year? So probably there will be increase in aftercare programs. Nobody even mentioned that. No, there are no challenges. There is nothing. There's no considerations taken in place in that plan. And there is nothing saying that, okay, well, let's try it for the first quarter and see how it's going to work. And then maybe the task force will meet every month and review and adjust. It's like, let's do it. And no matter how we're going to do it, but we're going to open it. At what cost? Nobody wants to know right now. So I'm wondering why none of these questions were not even mentioned on the last page of that presentation as like, we'll have to address it kind of things.
And those are very, very fair, very, very fair comments. And I believe that really genuinely is the purpose of that task force, is to bring forward concerns, ideas, issues, just like the ones that you brought forth. And I don't want you to get the impression that this is open at all costs. This is not open at all costs. This is open if it's safe to do so. Safety is the number one concern for our kids. Safety has always been the number one concern for our kids. So please know that continues to be the number one driving goal of this committee, and any work that staff is doing, and any consideration that comes before me as a school board member will be safety. What I will tell you is, as I listened to that task force meeting, I was very enlightened by some of the things that were brought up. For example, if we go with a blended model where we have a class of 20 kids, 10 of them are in the classroom and 10 of them are receiving live instruction at home, how does the teacher, I thought, wow, that's a great idea. It's a way to, accomplish social distancing and keep people safe, and everybody's still getting the same instruction. Kids feel anchored and connected to their classmates and their teacher. And then somebody said, well, how does a teacher manage a physical classroom in front of her and manage the virtual classroom that's out there, and anybody that might raise their hand in the virtual classroom, and any chats that might come in from the virtual classroom? And that was like my mind exploded. I was like, oh gosh, I hadn't even considered that. But that is literally the point of having teachers on that committee. And from what I understand, the Teachers Association has subcommittees that are working on many of these issues. They have a bunch of K2 teachers who have gotten together, a bunch of 3 through 5 teachers that have gotten together at every level to bring forth these concerns and figure out how they can be addressed. It's not just the success of our students, it's the success of our teachers too. Every consideration. Number one, safety. But when I say safety, I don't mean safety of our students. I mean safety of our students and our staff. Success of our students and our staff. It has to all be part of whatever package it is that we put together, Elena.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sean had his hand up too. Sean, you're muted. Do you want me to unmute you or?
I've got it. Thank you. And thank you for that report. With the buses, I've heard things, curtains, partitions being tossed around as well, which is an additional cost that we might need to look at. And then assigned seats. Now, if we did testing, tracing, and isolation program through the school health services, and that may be something that we need to look at, is having school health services to be able to identify who may or may not be spreaders or carriers, and sample just like we do. I remember going through TB testing when I was in elementary school. I remember us going around with the fluoride and doing the fluoride. So we have done this in the past. It's nothing new.
John, you're dating yourself.
I know. Now they just put the fluoride in the water, right?
Yeah.
So the other issue that I think may have been skipped over in that meeting is the chance at doing staggered schedules with virtual also.
You mean double sessions?
Yeah, but that would lessen how many kids have to get to school all at once.
Yeah.
So that you could take half of them and put them on a bus at a time. Yep. And then half of them in the afternoon with a cleaning procedure in between, of course.
Sean, I might be brain farting, but I thought that was in there. I thought the double sessions was one of the, I see John shaking his head. I thought double sessions was presented as an option.
Okay. Then I completely missed that one. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
So I think that we could definitely be the model for the rest of the state if we got this right.
Yep. Oh, I agree.
But it's going to take a lot of thinking, and we may need to rethink, health, even with the healthcare in school, with all of the issues that's on TV right now that is causing additional trauma on students. We may even think about expanding mental health in our schools.
Absolutely, and all of those are considerations that are most definitely being discussed by staff. I will, in terms of the health stuff and what our healthcare employees will be doing in the schools, all of that will be very tightly coordinated with the Lee County Department of Health. That is, the guidance that came out of the Department of Education, I thought was very soft in the sense that it did give us a lot of local control, which is something I've been begging for all along, and I am certainly not going to reject it now. I think this is the perfect time for us to seize local control, do what's right for kids and the Lee County community. That being said, one of the areas where I thought there was really strong guidance was making any healthcare decisions, tracing, identifying cases of COVID, when to close a building. All of those things have to be done in tight and close coordination with the local Department of Health. And I know that staff is working hard on putting those processes together.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chris, I have a couple of questions for you.
Okay, Daryl.
As I listen to some of the discussions, and there's a lot of classes that really wouldn't be able to function if you had some kids on some days and other kids on other days, or morning and afternoon, such as drama, swim, pottery, different things where there's a lot of group projects. They wouldn't be able to happen. There's actually more things that wouldn't be able to happen than that would be able to happen with some of the proposals already out there. I was also concerned when it came to your English as second language. Some of these kids can't speak English at all. You have your ESC students. Across the board, there's more challenges than not. Have they considered looking at just keeping everyone at home temporarily because of the challenges are too costly and too big to overcome to give everyone a fair and equal opportunity for an education?
Well, I think we're looking at this more through an equity lens than an equality lens. And what I mean by that is this: if you all, my favorite cartoon depiction is of 3 different people standing at a fence watching a baseball game, and one of the people is this tall, another person is that tall, and the other person is that tall. So the really tall person needs no assistance in being able to see over the fence to watch the game, whereas the medium height person needs a little bit of a step stool in order to be able to watch that game. And then the really short person needs a huge step stool in order to be able to see over the fence and watch that game. And so that's the lens through which we're looking at this. And it's not just the lens through which Lee County is looking at this. If you look at the governor's, I keep calling it the governor, the DOE's guidance for reopening, that also tells us that we need to prioritize getting ESE students into classrooms. We need to prioritize getting non-English speaking students into classrooms. We need to prioritize in getting our lowest 25 into classrooms in order to provide that equity. If you've got a kid that's already proficient and his classmate is not proficient, we got to get that kid up while still providing challenge and opportunities for new learning for the student who's already proficient. The student who's already proficient proved to us over the last quarter of distance learning that some instruction can take place there. So how do we make it a balanced playing field as we enter the new school year? I really think that's how we're looking at it.
That makes a lot of sense. I just see that there's more challenges, especially when I heard you talking about the busing, and you think of the children in the hallways or going up the staircase, or how many people are going to be waiting to use the bathroom or the cafeteria to get their food.
Yeah. There is no doubt.
More questions than that.
The number of challenges and the number of considerations and the number of things that we need to think about, there is no doubt that if we look at it, it could be considered a daunting task, but that's not the lens through which this district is looking at this. This is an opportunity. This is an opportunity for us to make our community stronger. And the best way to make a community stronger is through the provision of a really good, strong education system. This is not ideal. I mean, you know, our perfect education system we would be opening on August 10th and COVID would be gone. But we're going to have to make some changes to the way we deliver instruction, given the fact that COVID is real. So none of what we do is going to be ideal if we have to go to a blended environment. But how can we make those less than ideal circumstances as equitable as humanly possible? And how can we maximize the opportunities available through a blended instruction model? Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
I just can't be negative about this, Daryl. I can't. I have to know that I mean, look at Kelly and look at Barb. Look at them. there are two examples of the 15,000 people that work for the school district of Lee County who are busting their butts to make sure that this program is rolled out in a way that is successful for the entire community. So I have a lot of hope. I believe that this is gonna work for the vast majority of us.
I hope we're able to find a way to open the schools and get everyone back in classrooms sooner rather than later.
Yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Sean had his hand up next.
So it's been,
We lost you, Sean.
while since I was in school, as you can
Sean,
imagine, but
now. Okay. Sean, can you hear
I am
us?
going to,
Okay, so. Yes, Sean, I can't get back on. So, is there any other questions? Daryl, can you see everything now and take over?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Any more questions for Chris at this point?
I have
muted?
one.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. The question is, I guess, is what for Chris is what areas would she like us to provide any advice or help on? Are there particular areas we should be looking at as a committee? Because it's a huge subject, right? We could go on forever.
It is a huge subject, and I guess, CARES Act dollars might be helpful. Kelly, yes, no? I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you can give us, definitely after our conversation today, if you all can think of ways that we can better utilize the dollars, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, the CARES Act dollars come with very few sort of strings attached to them. There are some broad categories in which those expenditures can be made. And I think that gives us some flexibility locally that we wouldn't normally have. So if I were to focus your work, I would ask that would be an area of focus for you.
Okay. Did we get some? I think I might have seen something that showed like pluses and minuses, like what funds we were losing or what was costing us more versus what additional funds we got.
Yes.
There was something like that, right?
Yes. I don't
Okay.
know I don't know for sure that was included in this week's materials, but Kelly, I know
It
we've
was,
seen.
yeah,
It was good.
Yeah, it was not
Good.
in this week's material. It was a presentation that we did to the board before. I think it was in last month's presentation on things that expected, extra dollars we expected to have in the district, such as overtime from bus drivers, savings in fuel, things like that. But then additional costs that we anticipated that we would be incurring based on however we might have to open with COVID-19, and just some simple things, like unemployment. We have to pay our own unemployment. So we know unemployment's going up because even though a substitute teacher would not normally be qualified for unemployment during the summer months, this is a different situation and the state is being lenient. So they may say that there was an expectation that they would have work during time. And since that expectation is gone, they would provide unemployment to them. And when they do that, then we have to pay that. So it was those types of things that we were looking at.
Yeah, and the other piece for the entire committee, and Ken, in answer to your question, the governor was presented with the budget today. So we are going to, in very short time, know exactly what the budget's going to look like, which I would suspect would remove some stress from either remove or place more stress on Kelly's shoulders.
Right now, if I have a budget to work with, it would put less stress on me because I know what I'm working with. I had a question too.
I didn't see any other hands.
I thought Mary had a question.
Elena,
Yep. So is it still dimmer switch approach with soft opening in July, or it's we will be open only in April, in August, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the beginning part of the question.
Well, the beginning part, the question was, there were plans that something will be open like in July, the soft opening, the dimmer switch approach. And that's my second grader now hiding behind me.
Just adorable, by the way.
So he needs to go to school. Like I need my life back. So this dimmer switch approach with something with some activities camp, something open in July and then school opening in August, or we're just going for the school opening in August in various capacities. What is the approach with that?
From what I understand at this point, we have virtual instruction occurring for all summer school. So I don't know that we're doing the dimmer approach. I think we're doing the dimmer approach in the sense that we have opened campuses. We do have some summer workouts taking place on our campuses right now. I do believe we're going to be starting to, if we haven't already, opening our campuses to outside groups who look to rent those spaces and use those spaces for things like camps and that kind of thing. But I think that the plan for summer learning is already underway, and it might do more harm than good to disrupt it at this point.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And I know for sure that Mary had a question, and go ahead.
Yes, I do. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. My question is regarding the online learning. And did we baseline or establish a baseline for some of the students who never checked in? Do we have a sense of the remediation that they'll need?
Yes. Well, of the 95,000 students that we have, there are only 114 that we have not been able to contact. And I know for sure that one of them is my next door neighbor, and he was a senior and he moved to Georgia, and he just never answered any of the phone calls or texts or emails from his teachers, his administrator. Everybody tried really hard to reach out to him. He just never responded to anybody. So 114 out of 95,000 is great. And that will be the focus, Mary, when we head back to school, is determining exactly where each kid is. I'm sure you've heard at this point, you've heard of Summer Slide before. Now we have to add Summer Slide to COVID Slide, because there were some kids who simply were not able to learn through a virtual environment. And then there were others who were incredibly successful through a virtual environment. So providing teachers with tools that they can use to, and I hate to use the word assessment because, testing has such a bad connotation in people's heads, but the assessments will be used as a diagnostic tool for our teachers when they enter the classroom to determine where each kid is and what each kid needs in order to either provide enrichment or to provide remediation to get everybody to where they're supposed to be.
Okay, and another question, do we have a sense of the population? Have we lost, do we know if we've lost a lot of students or?
It's my understanding that the opposite is occurring, and that's a little bit of a finance concern for me. There are a lot of people who are fleeing northeastern states and major metropolitan areas given the experience that they've had over this crisis. So if I were a betting person, I would say that we're going to see a spike in our student population. And the reason why that concerns me from a financial perspective, I think we talked about this last month, is the state has already determined how much money they're going to give us per student. And if we are 300,000 more students across the state of Florida than we were last year, that same amount of money now has to be divided amongst those 300,000 more students. So we actually experience a decrease in per pupil funding as more kids come into the state. So that's definitely another concern of mine. And I know that it's something that Kelly and Finance are keeping an eye on.
Okay. And you do that in October, don't you? Your final count?
I'm sorry?
October. Do you do your count in October?
Yeah, we do have a count in October, right, Kelly?
Yes, we have
Okay.
we do a count in October and February, but when she talked about the cap is statewide. So they have funding for a certain number of students. If we get more than in the state of Florida, that number of students that they had projected, we get a proration versus additional funding. So that's what she's talking about, is statewide what happens.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Welcome.
Sean's up next.
All right, I'm back online. Daryl, you are viral. So anyway, this ties in actually very well with Mary's question. And Chris, you touched on this a little bit about assessment. And when I was going to school, I know a lot of the teachers would cohort their students into group A, group B, group C to improve like the lower performing students, to get them sort of to a group B, and then speed up the group A as much as they possibly could, and then try getting the Bs to the As. Is that still going on in education, or is that something that is a thing of the past? I'm just unfamiliar with the way that classrooms are organized and run at this point. Because if it is like that still, with these assessments, we would be able to cohort the students, either mixing to increase their advancement, or group them in a way that would be possible to achieve our educational goals.
John, I don't know that I would look at it as a B, C group. I think I would look at it as this group of students needs to work on standards 1 through 3. The next group of standards has proven proficiency in standards 1 through 5, so we're going to provide that group with some enrichment. And the next group of students has shown that they need some additional help in mastering standards 3 through 6. So that group of standards, that group of standards students will work together to master those standards. So I don't look at it as an A, B, and C thing as much as I look at it as making sure that students are getting exactly what they need in terms of our ability to assess whether they've mastered the necessary standards. So we can group kids together in that way.
Okay. And that might be maybe the same grouping that we could use in staggered schedules or cohorting for the COVID as well?
That's a really great question. And it is one that I will certainly send an email to the superintendent and tell him that it came out of this committee.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chris, how will that affect the students that are in the IB and ACE programs that are graduating for this year and for next year?
I'm not sure I understand what do you mean, how will it affect them?
Well, they can't take the exams, the end of the year exams. They can't take their challenge exams. Most of the things that they would be actually judged on have been wiped out. I've heard several different things where they would either make a determination based on their grades or using some other formula, but that doesn't seem very legitimate, should I say.
I understand the question. So it's my understanding that IB, and I don't know a ton about what IB is doing, but it is my understanding that IB is doing an objective assessment of the student's body of work throughout the school year in conjunction with the teacher's evaluation of the student's body of work throughout the school year to determine whether this past year they mastered what they needed to master in order to be considered graduates of that program. Now, AP is entirely different. AP administered exams. And in some AP courses, there was no exam, but there was a final project due, and those final projects were submitted, and we should be getting scores out of AP in about a month. So I think
What about
AP,
ACE?
I'm sorry?
What about the Cambridge ACE program?
Cambridge ACE, that one, I have no details on that, but what I can tell you is they were building the plane as they were flying as well. My expectation of those organizations would be that as we enter this next school year, they will be able to answer your question about students who are entering their junior and senior year for IB this year and what that's going to look like for them in a COVID environment.
Okay, I know a lot of families that are, including my own, that's affected by that.
Yeah.
So, you know, a determination not based off of a test score, giving the child a chance is a little scary to me.
I hear you. I hear you. And believe me, college admissions programs are very, very well aware of what's going on and the need to accommodate kids. Because I mean, a kid who's graduating from an IB program, you can't wipe out a year and 3/4 worth of work that kid has done just because he can't take a test, you know? So it's considerations have to be given. And as much difficulty as I have sometimes with the education decisions coming out of Tallahassee, the two words, grace and compassion, that have been repeated over and over and over again by the DOE have led our work, and I believe it's leading the work of people across the nation when it comes to approaching education during the time of COVID.
It's just scary because that's an obscene amount of money those students are relying on to graduate those programs, and to have that based off of, you know, someone sitting behind a desk that says, you passed, you didn't, you passed. It's kind of scary. I know a few people had reached out and had asked me if I knew anything, and I'm like, why would I know? I'm in the same boat as you are.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you.
Okay. If you hear anything, please let me know.
Absolutely.
That's one, you know, that's a personal one for me, though.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
A
Chris.
bunch
You're
of us.
welcome.
Was there any other questions, or John, you have anything to add? No? Okay. Okay, Sean, anything before we go? Next. Okay, next up on the
I have nothing,
agenda
sir.
is COVID. Okay, just making sure. COVID-19 update. I'm guessing Kelly's on that one.
Yes, if you don't mind, I'm not going to try and share the presentation because it takes away the picture and I can't work this stuff at the same time. Each of you were sent all the information on that we have on the COVID-19. I was just going to kind of talk over some of this stuff. So as Ms. Patrica said, we did get notice today that the budget was sent to the governor, and the governor did say he would be vetoing some items on that budget. So what that means yet, we still don't know. When they talked about the CARES Act and sent out information to us before, it was very open. Basically, you know, you could use the funds for just about anything. And so by that, we took it that it was probably going to be one of those to fill the gap of whatever funding isn't coming from the state. Kind of let us fill a gap, kind of like they did with the funding when, you know, we had the recession type thing, kind of give it to us. And so we were working kind of under that impression. Last Friday, we got an email early in the day that said that they would be doing a webinar on the CARES Act in the afternoon. And so that was what I sent to you all, was the webinar from the CARES Act that we had been on. And basically they went through there some things that they wanted districts to focus on. So they want us to focus on our lowest performing students. They want us to focus on safety, mental health, on our ELL students. So they gave us some focus areas they wanted us to focus on. So actually we are meeting tomorrow morning, my staff with academic services. We're going to sit down. We have a half-a-day meeting planned to try and go through the CARES Act information that was provided, try and figure out what is the best way that we can use that money to support our students, and work from there based on the information that they provided to us. Right now, we're looking at about $21 million is what Lee County's portion of that is. Some of that will be shared with charter schools. and we have to provide an equitable services to private nonprofit schools. So we are still trying to work with the state. I actually had staff sitting in this afternoon, and I think there's one again tomorrow on a webinar on what exactly that means when they say equitable services. So we're trying to determine what that means. This is all coming together very quickly. Like I said, that meeting was Friday, and the plan is supposed to be provided back to the state by June 30th. So we have very limited time to work on that. We probably will not have a budget from the state before it's due. So we're kind of in the dark about what we're going to be losing to try and see if we, have gaps to fill. The funding from the CARES Act will go through, I think it was August of 2022. So we will have that for a couple of years. Whatever we don't use this year will carry over to the following year. So that is a good thing that we will have that ability to do that, because I do believe there will be a lot of expenses that will be coming forward that we just haven't thought about. We're trying to look at all of our funding as well to make sure we're utilizing the best funding for the things that we have. I'm gonna give you an example of that. I sat in on a webinar with FEMA the other day. FEMA will reimburse us for personal protection things. So for face masks, for hand sanitizers, things like that. As long as we don't use CARES Act dollars or another area to fund it, they'll pay us a portion of that, much like they did with the hurricane. They pay a 75% share. The state does 12.5%, and the district does 12.5%. So we're looking at all of those things that FEMA will cover, and then we won't put those things into the CARES Act because that's another source of funding we can get money for, and then use our CARES Act to target those students in the classroom and do that. So we're looking at all of those pieces of funding that's coming in, and they're coming in every single day. Just yesterday, I got a thing from the state on the CTE programs. So those are our career technology programs for students during the day. They gave out some grant opportunities yesterday, and literally it's happening so fast. They're sending an email at 11 for a webinar at 1. And so you can imagine, how quickly we're having to turn this stuff around. There is some money from the CARES Act for our post-secondary, our technical colleges. So we're also looking at that and trying to utilize those dollars. There was some money in the presentation you probably saw for GEARS funding, which was summer. It was a little over $2 million that was available for that. So we met right after that webinar with our academic services people that were working on the summer program. Now our summer program started Monday. So we talked to them and said, okay, because I don't know if you had a chance to review it or what you picked up, but there was a requirement of 80 hours. So your program has to give 80 instructional hours to the students. There was some assurances that you were, targeting certain students, your ELL, your lowest performing, and it had to focus on reading. So we went through, what our program was. So our program for summer, as everyone and Ms. Patrica had said, is a total distance learning. So we're doing that totally virtually. We're not doing any face-to-face instruction. So we just got the notice today that it has to be some sort of face-to-face instruction in order to be eligible for that GEARS Act funding. So as it stands right now, it doesn't look like we'll be able to utilize that, because to change our program right now, because we're already up and running, and try to work it so that it's a face-to-face program, we're not sure if we can do it. I am going to have staff call the state tomorrow and see if there is some way we can utilize the dollars, because our programs had already started. They told us about it Friday, and then Monday we're starting our program, and no one can change a program that fast. I don't care how good you are, you cannot change a program that fast. So we're going to try and see if there's any way we can utilize those dollars that they will accept. So we're going to be working on that as well. So I know you all probably went through some of the stuff. I know there was a lot of information, but I'll take any questions, and I see Sean has one.
Surprise. Kelly, the one thing that I want to make sure of is that you have enough support in your department at this time to be able to be on all of these webinars, to be included in all of these conversations, because every single one of these seems imperative that we attend and that we obtain the knowledge and that we complete the applications in a timely manner and get those submitted. So do you have the staff you need at this time to do all of this? Because if not, we're going to have things fall through the cracks, unfortunately. I mean, it's just human to do so.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Actually, I have some amazing staff members in my office. I have one person who focuses strictly on the grants, and this is coming through from the state like a grant. So she has attended every one of the meetings, webinars, no matter who else is on it. At the same time, I usually have one or two other staff members, depending on, I have a staff member who one of their focuses is the technical colleges and the CTE program. So I've had him set in on those as well as the grant person. And then I have a coordinator in my office, and she has sat in on all of them as well. Along with that, we have the grants department is sitting in on all of these with us so that we're all on the same page, because they also need to be aware of what's coming through. So between all of us, we're making sure every time we get it, we all send out an email and like, okay, who's got this? So, because we want to make sure that somebody from somewhere is getting that information. But so far, we have been able to have at least one person, if not more, on every one of the webinars. And then we, as soon as it's over, we get together and we start discussing what they heard and who needs to be involved on the conversations, who needs to be brought in to have the discussions. And that's how we're determining what meetings need to be set up and who needs to be brought in on it. But at this time, I really feel like we do. Thank you. I thank you for thinking of that.
And then the second question I have is with the Lee County share of 21 million and sharing that with charter and non-public private schools.
Mm-hmm.
Have we ever had to share funds with non-private or non-public private schools before?
Yes.
Or is that something new?
Yeah, and it's, I'm sorry, not-for-profit private schools are the ones that we have to share, and all of our grant dollars are set up so that you have to give equitable services to not-for-profit private schools. And so the difference here is, and this is what we're trying to figure out, each grant handles that differently based on the grant guidelines. So when they sent this to us and they said equitable services, we started asking, and they're referring us back to the federal guidelines for it, but the federal guidelines, you know, are different for each of the grants. So that's why we're trying to figure out exactly what does that mean for us. Now, in all of these, your first thing you have to do is you have to kind of put a call out. You send a thing out to all of the private schools and you let them know that this funding is available. You're going to have a meeting. And if they're interested, they need to attend that meeting. Usually that's done once a year for all grants opportunities. But this one has such a quick turnaround time that the grants office is working on that thing right now so that we can get this turned around with them. And it's very hard because we have very little information to provide them other than there's CARES Act dollars. This is the assurances that have to be met in order to use those dollars. Here's kind of the layout and, you know, are you interested? Now for charter schools, the state has told us that we have the charter schools portion is their proportionate share based on the third FTE survey of this year, the current year. So it would have been from February's, any student count they had in February is what we use for their proportionate share. So it's not based on next year's students, it's based on the current year's students for the charter schools. So we actually had 3 charter schools that were supposed to open next year. We're down to only one of them opening next year. And so now we're trying to determine, what does that mean for that new charter school? Do they get a portion of this? And if so, how is theirs based? So we're working on the state with that right now too. And I see
Mike's up next.
Yeah, just a quick question. With the CARES Act funding and with private schools, is there any consideration that they were separate nonprofits that may have gotten their own independent CARES Act money separate from Lee County and potentially double dipping?
I don't know that. All I know is what the state has told us that we have to do. And as long as they are a not-for-profit private school, we have to make the offer to them.
Okay, because that seems to be a potential loophole, because I would assume any private school has the ability to have applied for, as a nonprofit, to apply for CARES Act funding directly to the private school. And then if they get a portion of Lee County CARES Act money too, that would be above and beyond potentially.
So the wording is a little bit different between charters and privates. Charters is their proportionate share. So theirs is based on their students. Private is equitable services. So it isn't necessarily that they get a certain dollar amount. Some services that we're providing through these dollars to for their students, like our students. So depending on what that is, so usually how that's interpreted is if we provide psychological services through one of our grants, then we have to provide that same psychological service to the students at their school based on that. So that's how it usually works with equitable services. And it could be depending on how we write our CARES Act. And if we, said that we were focusing our services on, this population, if they don't have that population, there would be no equitable service that could be provided to them. So it really is a difference between the two. But in answer to your question, I don't know if there have any other fundings available. I do know on the FEMA phone call that I sat in with, they were not eligible for a lot of the reimbursements that we are eligible for, even being a private not-for-profit. And I think Mary had a question.
Yes, I do. A couple of questions. So we don't know yet what is the services. Are these also religious schools?
They could be, yes.
Okay. And also, when does the money have to be spent? By the end of the school year, or does it have to be encumbered by December?
The CARES Act dollars are available to us starting, actually we can go back to March 13th, I think was the date they told us, all the way up through August of 2022. So that is two school years that we would have that funding available to us.
And is that spent or encumbered?
It needs to be liquidated by August of 2022.
Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Kelly, have we determined the savings yet on fuel and other things that we haven't been using?
No, we haven't been able to do that as of yet. And so you would think that would be simple, right? So we have fuel, we just stopped using fuel. You think we'd be able to figure that out. I wish it was that simple. There are things that we as a school district do for other government agencies to help everyone out. Of course, you all know buying in bulk allows us to get a lot of savings. So we partner with our county and emergency management, and we purchase fuel for all the ambulances and things like that. And so we're still purchasing fuel, and then we charge them back for that. So that's a moving target as we're going. So we have not been able to pinpoint exactly what that savings is going to be.
That may end up covering at least some transportation heading into next year and make up some of this deficit. It looks like there has to be a deficit. It's just how much can we make up of it with different savings from across the board?
Yes. So overall, we're estimating about $9 to $10 million in what we believe the savings would be. That being said, you know, a lot of things are happening, and so it's a constant moving target. So hoping that we can hit that amount, that would be a good dollar amount if we could.
Do we know what their cost has been of COVID?
So far, we have not had a lot of cost for COVID. We purchased Chromebooks, we purchased hotspots, we purchased the hand sanitizing machines. We'd actually bought those right before they closed the schools. So we'd purchased some machines, some hand sanitizers, you know, like that have the little machine with the hand sanitizer on it. You put your hand under it and it does that. We had just bought some of those prior to the closing. So we have that cost that we have. Other than that, we have some costs like in the report cards. We had to print report cards and mail them this year versus handing them out to students at the school. So we had some additional costs there. But overall, so far, we haven't had a lot of additional cost. The biggest cost probably that we're going to come across right now would be our summer extended learning program, because we are offering extended learning to every student in Lee County, not just to, normally we offer it to our third grade students who are in jeopardy of passing or low performing. And then we have our credit retrieval at high schools. But this year we've offered our extended learning opportunity for every student in Lee County, which has been an increased cost for our summer.
What about sports? We saved money on sports, but yet I have seen a few students posting online that they're excited about going back. I believe it's next month that a lot of them are planning. And I heard football's already started.
So I guess it depends on which side you're looking at on savings or cost, right? So yes, we have savings in that we haven't had to pay for umpire, or referees. We haven't had to pay for security for football games, and yet on a school side, there's losses because for every one of those games, they make money at the ticket booth, and so there's a revenue loss along with the revenue savings in that, which outweighs the other. I don't know. My understanding is they are starting summer sports up, and they're having students come in over the summer. I know I saw something about band coming in. They usually have those summer programs for the bands and the sports, and they're opening that up for the summer.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Were there any more questions? Sean. I know it. Sean, you're
all
up.
right. This might be an item for future, but with the food services and us getting the summer allocation for the in-school break spots, and then also I heard some kerfuffle about Oaks Farms contracts that we got out of that, and where are we going to get our produce, and do we have a backup supplier on that? And then I don't know if this is a budgetary issue yet or if it is a consideration we should be looking at with food services.
So it depends on how we open the schools and what the limitations are on food service as to what will happen there. Right now, food service is one of the areas that I didn't mention it, but they have had an additional cost associated with the food service from our feedings, because we have continued to feed children throughout this whole thing. So we have set up the grab and goes and continue to feed them. There is an additional cost to do that. And the state's reimbursement rate for that is much like our summer reimbursement rate, which is lower than our rate during the regular school year. So that did cost us. we are very blessed that our food service program is a very healthy program. So they have a large amount of reserve that remains every year. And so they have been able to cover those additional expenses without any jeopardy to the program coming up. If we open our schools and we have to feed our students in the classroom, there's going to be additional cost associated with that. Because you're going to have someone who can deliver the food, someone who can pick up the food. There's extra cleaning costs. So we're looking at it could possibly mean additional custodial services, because you're going to have those now, instead of contained in one area, you have all of that throughout the school. So we're looking at the different feeding options and then what that might mean, because you have to have carts to deliver the food to students. You can't have one cart because you're going to be delivering to multiple classrooms and multiple people are going to have to be delivering them. So those are things that the food service department is looking at right now.
Thank you. And
Anything else, Sean?
just on the Oaks Farm, that to get out of that contract, that didn't cost us any money, right? There wasn't a provision in the contract to pay out a certain sum.
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't have all the information on the Oaks Farm to be able to respond to that accurately. I can get that information and let you know, but I don't have that information.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Kelly? Thank you for the update, Kelly.
You are very welcome.
And it looks like the last thing on the agenda is July and August meetings. I wanted to propose that we continue to work through the summer at the district meetings and the chairs meeting. They discussed us working through the summer. I guess we need a show of hands on who's interested in continuing to work through the summer.
And I would like to share that if you're a current member and your time is up, I believe Barb sent everyone an email if your time was going to be up. But according to the time frame of things that you are also able to be here for the July and August meetings if you would like to do that. It is the September that the new people would start.
So do we have, okay, we have one. Anybody else want to work? 2, 3. Can't tell, Tamika, are you in or out? Or?
We can't hear you, Tamika.
It looks.
I see John. I see Alina. I thought I saw Mary's. I see Mike, Sean, Daryl. Tamika, can you raise your hand if you're in?
To work during the summer?
Yeah, have a meeting in July and August.
No, I'm going to say we need to take a break.
Okay. And Bill,
Bill, not required to meet that during the summer. Doesn't count against.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll take a break for the summer.
Yeah.
I'll take a break too.
Okay. And Joel, I think I saw your hand up for a yes. Okay, good. Ken?
Ken, are you there?
You cut out a while ago.
Okay. Sean, are you a yes or no? I can't see a hand.
Sean is a yes.
I see you, Mary. I got you, Mary.
And Mr. Cohen's not here. He's usually during the summer too, the former chair.
Is it going to be virtual?
Yes.
As far as we know right now, it will be virtual.
Okay, that works.
And then also I have a question, Kelly. When things resume back to normal, will we continue meeting via Zoom?
I don't anticipate that when everything is back to normal that we will be. That is a decision that the district will continue to make for us as to whether they have to be on Zoom or in person.
Okay.
I think Miss Patrica has something she wants to say.
I want you to know that I will bring to the board the conversation about virtual attendance at meetings, because we have a diverse population of people on our committees, and I don't think anyone should be left out over, being part of a vulnerable population who should not be at a physical meeting when these resume. So I will bring that conversation to the board.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
And then the dates for that, I think, Barb, do you have the tentative dates?
I do. July 15th and August 19th. And it's the same format, the third Wednesday.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve those dates and advertise?
Sean Williams, I move so.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I guess raise your hand.
That's everybody?
Yep.
Mary? Sorry, I can't see hands.
Okay, and the last thing is what you would like to discuss in July. Do we have a topic so I can line someone up to, or some topics up?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question on the teachers' vacancies. Will we have a sense of the teachers' vacancies and the how we're doing at recruiting and the impact on our budget? Needless to say, if they're vacant.
Okay, I'll see what we can do. If we want to have someone from HR come in and talk about that at that time, we can.
Okay. Also, are we able to get the update and discuss the funding, since the governor only has until the end of this month to sign or not sign the budget? That will determine the $500 million towards educator or staff raises, whatever that's going to be, and what we're going to get per student has to be done by the end of this month.
Sure, I can give an update on that in July.
And I'm sure that's where a lot of the questions are going to come from.
And I'm assuming there will be a finalized plan.
By the 15th, there's a shot. If anyone can do it, Kelly can.
The plan's not mine. Academic services is pulling the plan together. But I will try and have an update on that as well. I know that Ms. Patrica said the task force is actually meeting right now at the same time that we are.
And hopefully at that point, well, Debbie will be with us at that point. So hopefully Debbie will be able to give us an update. She's heard what we're looking for, and reach out to any of us if you have questions. You know how to get a hold of me, Debbie. Okay, Mr. Tubb, I do see you. You have a hand up? I'm trying to.
You still voting for the summer meetings? I voted yes a long time ago.
I'm seeing all hands up, so, okay.
I think Lena had a hand up.
Yes, I was wondering if we can get numbers on sales tax in July. How low did we fall?
Okay.
Thank you.
I can remember they're 2 months behind, so yeah. But we should have updated numbers close to that time, at least for the end of June.
Okay.
And we're expecting that to be down considerably since everything was closed.
We were in our projection, we had originally projected about 80-something million, and we were down to about 50-something million in our projections. So we did a little bit better in the last one that we collected than we had thought. But that was just as some of the things were closed down. Now we're looking at the next one will be the time period when everything was closed down. So that should give us a better handle on where we might be.
Okay. Sean had his hand up.
Yeah, just follow-ups actually from prior meetings with our insurance discussion, and just maybe a quick update on that at some point, checking in. with those departments, and then also the risk assessment that Deloitte was, or whatever the firm was, the outside firm on the risk assessment for internal audits. And if there are any updates on the internal auditing function, just an update on those would be great as well. Either one of those two meetings.
I'm interested in the insurance one and the audit as well. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and
Been a while.
I sent out along with, I think I sent it to you, Daryl. I don't know if I sent it to everybody, but I might have. I did check on that prior to this meeting, and the only response that I had received at that point was that, you remember that meeting was right before the COVID-19 happened and everything was closed down. And so that has delayed the ability for them to do the survey. Everything kind of shifted to COVID-19 and what needed to be done for distance learning and things like that. So that shift kind of happened at that point. So I do know that Mrs. McClung, who takes care of the keeping up with those things, did reach out again to HR. And so I'll check back and see if anything happened after that.
Can you ask Angela Pruitt about an update on recruitment? I know Mary mentioned it. I just wanted to make sure that that was something. It has to be a lot harder to recruit. I'm seeing it on Facebook and in my email to me, asking if I'm interested.
Sure.
And John's up next. John?
You got my question. I forget who asked it already. Sorry.
Oh, no problem. Any other questions or anything for the good of the order?
I guess, sorry. Let me raise my hand.
It's
Sure.
okay.
One of the questions, and I know we don't have a clue of which way we're going to go yet for the next school year. But I guess one of the questions, and I talked to an AP about it earlier today, was, Chris, I'll say for you or maybe for Debbie next month, is there a process or a plan maybe to engage some of the parents for a while to help with the transition, either taking temperatures, things like that, something that's simple. I don't know what it means opposite insurance, but when you look at all the things that are going to change, that have to change, one way or the other, and it was mentioned earlier, clearly the teachers and some of the other folks don't have the time capacity to do it. Is there an opportunity, I think, in some schools maybe to engage some parents or things like that to accomplish those objectives until we get the overall processes lined out in each school?
It's a great question, John. And one of the issues that came up in a recent FSBA meeting was how do we harness volunteers in a virtual environment? Right. So, virtual volunteer opportunities. So I've already sent the question about virtual volunteers to the superintendent, but I will send that question to him as well.
Yeah, this is much more about physical volunteers as opposed to the virtual ones.
Right. And just so you guys know, when I send these questions to the superintendent, they're not recommendations from the committee. They're really just questions. And so I've asked him to respond to them in the board update that he provides us each week. So Debbie will have the answers to the questions for you at the next meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, John. Okay, if that's all, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Sean Williams.
All in favor, raise your hand, please. Looks like we're all good. Thank you everyone for coming.
Bye, everybody.
Chris, thanks
Bye-bye.
to see you again.
Bye.
Stay
Bye,
safe.
everyone. See you in July.
See you next month, Debbie.
Bye. Stay safe.
Stay well, everybody.
Bye.